Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am Zach, one of the hosts, and the other host is Chris. What's up, my brother from another mother?
Hello, Zach, and everyone that has joined us. Thank you so much, Jack. Zach, did I just call you Jack?
You did. You
Dude,
did. Yeah,
Zach.
Jack's my other persona.
No, thank you so much, Zach. We have a wonderful guest on today. It's just like awesome. We're so excited to have Kyle. So thank you, Kyle, for joining us so much. It's just wonderful to have you. And
Thank you for having me on.
wonderful.
Nice to meet you
Yeah,
guys.
we are. We are. Thank you so much, Kyle. We are incredibly excited to welcome Kyle Newman to the show. Kyle's an award-winning filmmaker, a New York Times bestselling author, and was also nominated for a Hugo Award. His works include One Up, Barely Legal, The Hollow, A Disturbance in the Force, Heroes Feast, the official D&D cookbook, Heroes Feast, Flavors of the Multiverse, and one of my absolute favorite movies, Fanboys. So, folks, if you have not seen Fanboys, please turn in your nerd card because it's a must-watch if you are a nerd. Kyle is a fellow nerd like the rest of us, and we're so excited to speak with him. In fact, I've wanted to speak with him for a very long time. And so it's super exciting to have him on with us to share his career and more with you. So, Kyle, again, thank you so much for doing this. It's an absolute honor. And like I said, someone I've wanted to talk to for a long time.
Thank you very much. I mean, you were expressing before we recorded how much you love Fanboys, and it always makes me so happy. I spent so much time making that movie, and it was a very hard journey protecting it, making sure it stayed true to the spirit of what it needed to be. So it's always great to hear someone connect with it, watch it over and over. It made it all worthwhile. So thank you. I love the poster back there. I recommend it. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. It's fun. If you love Star Wars, if you love anything nerd related, it's set in that special time in 1998, before the prequels, before fandom really took off, before San Diego Comic-Con exploded. So it was really just Star Wars and Star Trek, maybe Farscape was somewhere in the background and Babylon 5, but it wasn't Harry Potter. There wasn't Lord of the Ring films yet. And 1998 was this, I think, special time, an innocent time in fandom. So
Yeah.
that's what we tried to capture. I'm glad you love it.
I do. If it was possible to wear out a Blu-ray or a DVD disc, I would have worn it out by now. Uh,
Yeah.
for those of you who aren't old enough to go through the trials and tribulations that was VHS, where you could wear the tapes out, it's definitely a thing of the past. But Kyle, one of the things we like to do on this show when we have guests on with us is we like to go in the Wayback Machine. And so much in sci-fi and Star Trek, like our namesake, there's a lot of time travel. We want to time travel back to the very beginning. And I'm curious, what's the earliest memory you have of wanting to get involved into this industry?
Let's see. I fell in love with Star Wars at a very early point in my life. An ungodly early age was probably my first memory. So that just became the way I understood and rationalized events in the world. I could correlate anything to Star Wars. There wasn't a day that goes by that I don't think of or correlate to Star Wars to this day. And I think that just turned into a passion for filmmaking because I began to realize that that was a job you could have. These were things that people made collectively. A team made these things. And I started to read books about it and magazines, subscribing to things like, the Star Wars, like Bantha Tracks, the Star Wars Fan Club, getting into things like Cinepastique, just reading different books about VFX, watching lots of movies, animated films, live action films, just started to get a feel for all the different mediums. I'd say by the time maybe I was like 14 or 15, I was really into movies, but then I started to think about it as a potential career path. My background was drawing, painting. I also just knew I worked well with people and didn't want to sit in a studio my whole life. So it made sense that there was this medium, film, which was an amalgamation and almost a culmination of all these different mediums. I like theater and photography and costume, and it all coalesced into something bigger. And so I guess I just always said that's what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. It was at some point in my teenage years, just kind of, it wasn't like one day I woke up and was like, aha, I need to do this. It was just kind of like an obvious thing. I guess that's what I'm doing, a natural progression. I didn't realize how hard it would be, and all the crazy steps it would take. But I don't think anybody does. You just fall in love with it and you just set out on the path to do it.
That's beautiful. Is there a part of the creative process that like you enjoy more, whether it's either at the beginning or the conceptual phase where just you've got the idea, or when it's actually moved into the actual project and you're either working with the people or you're working with the other members of your team that are creating, the products of the vision, or is it all of it?
It's really all of it. When I'm in the writing
Hmm.
phase or the development phase, I love it, but I'm excited to move on to the next phase. I do love the blue sky, the openness, what it could be, brainstorming, coming up with what music it should be set to, storyboarding myself. I love that open realm of it all. Could go anywhere, you haven't fully cast it yet. You don't know where you're shooting yet. The hardest part, I guess, is getting it off the ground. There's so
Mm.
much compromise at that phase where you're like, this movie needs to cost 8 million. And then they're like, can you do it for 3.6? And you're like, I guess, let me figure this out, and you really can't, but you can't say no to making your movie. Like the last movie I made, One Up, really needed a much bigger budget than what we had. And we ended up get it whittled down. We ended up with say 3.9 million. In 25 days during the height of the pandemic, I was doing maybe 50 setups a day,
Wow.
which is an unprecedented rate. And at that point, it was my fourth feature. I knew what I needed. I knew I could do one or two takes and I had it, and I couldn't be precious. You just got to go, go, go. Um, I love shooting too. I love being on set. I love the energy with all the people. I love problem solving. I love when someone's like, well, we got this much time to do this and this, and coming up with something that wasn't in the storyboards or wasn't in the script or wasn't in the plan to make something flow and happen. If you look at it like plumbing, it has to flow. The story has to flow. So you just have to figure it out, you know? Um, and I like that where you're just like, you shoot and you figure it out. You're not going to sit and stop and debate for 12 minutes. I could have shot 2 setups. Let's go, let's go. So um, I and then the editing phase is like a chance to redo the whole film. That's when
Yeah.
reality sets in. And so it doesn't matter what you wrote. It doesn't matter what you shot. A new story takes place and is unearthed in editing. And I love that. I sit there every day with my editor and we go through it. Like I'm not an editor. I don't like to touch buttons. I don't like to touch. If I can get to that point where I'm not touching computers, it's better for me. I like it. I used to manually cut, on old Steambex and things like that, and I know how to. But I like that process of the collaboration, sitting there with somebody else who also is a master of the footage and understands it. And you have a conversation, and you don't have to sit and theorize about it. You just try it. You try it and see. And there's so much fear in this process because maybe there's a lot on the line, reputations and money. But I'm always like, just try it. In a script, cut it, change it. Does it work better? Remove the scene. There can't be precious about anything at any point.
Mm.
Um, and that's what I've learned. And that's why I can go into each phase, I think, with an open mind and have a blast with it. And all the phases are so entirely different. And then marketing is like a whole other thing, but those 3 key phases of filmmaking, it's hard to pick a favorite. I would say maybe shooting, because when you're in the script writing phase, there's still a chance that someone's going to say, no, we're not making it.
Mm.
Nope, you lost your money. But when you're there on set and there's trucks and they spent money and there's a guy making dinner for everybody back at base camp, you're there. No one can take the toys away. I love that feeling of you're finally made it. And after, invariably takes years to get these projects going. So that's always a good feeling. And it's empowering. I mean, like you've done something right to this point to get here. So, it's just a great feeling to get everyone together and bring out the best in everybody, the different vocations. They're experts. I love working with an art director. I love working with a casting director. It's just like you get to flex all these different muscles. So it's really hard to choose a favorite aspect of it, but it's like it is a dream job. So I'm very thankful I've gotten opportunities to do it.
So
wonderful.
we love hearing about the process, the behind the scenes, what it takes to put something together. And I think as the more guests that we've had on, the more I know I and Chris both become fascinated with that kind of that process, whether it's the production piece, the directing piece for the actors, all that stuff that comes together to make the magic that we see on screen. And I'm curious for you, Kyle, specifically, as a director, what's your process like? If you can, and you can use Fanboys as an example or another project, doesn't really matter. Maybe take us through like, step by step, what you do from a directorial standpoint when you're setting up a shot and how you're getting your vision on camera.
So much more happens before you even get to that moment. So that moment should almost be cathartic and almost like dealing with any unplanned issues that pop up. By that point, you should have gotten your cast prepped, your location ready, the set designs right, camera team knows exactly how you want it shot. So by that point, it should be execution, you hope. But there's probably on any given day as a director, you probably have like 700 to 1,000 quick decisions to make, and you have to live with them for the rest of your life. And if you freeze, you're dead. If you look like you don't know what you're talking about, people are like, why am I listening to him? You just have to keep going. So if you're not sure, just shoot, say, let's do this, pick one, do it, keep going, and figure it out in your head. You're also processing a lot of things at the same time. So I always find that the bulk of the making of the movie happens prior. You're so thorough in talking about it with everybody that it actually just preps you. You're talking to your production designer. You're talking to your props guy. You're talking to your camera department. And in talking about it over and over repetitively, you're prepping them, but you're also prepping yourself. You are making the movie before you make the movie. You want to know, because it's overwhelming. There's an infinite number of places you can put a camera. Why do you put a camera there? Why do you hold on a shot versus cut? Why is it a 2-shot versus a 1-shot? Why is it a wide shot? Why do you need this location shot? Why do you need this close-up? Why do you need this insert? Every single thing, if you stop and question it, it's overwhelming. So you almost just have to go second nature. So the more you prepare, the more it becomes like muscle reflex. So I am a very thorough planner. And I think if it's not in the script or you haven't thought about it in the script, then cut it. It will never be there. And if there's a chance to fix something in pre-production, you fix it. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll wait till we get the money and then we'll fix the script. Wrong, fail. Your movie's never going to get made. You will probably have to do 50, 70, 100 drafts of something. And then once you get your cast, and as the cast comes to life, and it's not someone you expected, or it's somebody new that brings another dimension, your script should then evolve and accommodate the humanity that a new person's bringing to it. You got to harness it. So it's a living, organic process. And I don't think everybody has the mindset to do it. It's kind of maddening. You have to be able to multitask, like walk out of one room, walk into another room, and think like a business person. And you walk over here and you're thinking like a theater person. And you walk over here and you're thinking in terms of drafting and graphics. And then you walk over here and it's architecture. And you just have to keep shifting what you're doing. And ultimately, it gets channeled through just story. And you constantly say, does this check with my story? Does this check with my story? Is it making the story better? Do I need it? Do I need it? And then the second part of your brain is also thinking, if you're thinking like a producer or an independent filmmaker like I am, almost everything I've done is independent. You are questioning every dollar you spend. Do I need that wall painted for 350, or do I rather have 7 more extras, in this scene? And, what do I need to bring something to life? And you're always trying to find what's the minimum threshold, since your money is so scarce and valuable, that you have to kind of protect every dollar. So you really want to think through what is the most economical way to shoot this that also yields the same result or similar result, and then make those value judgments. I've never had the chance to just make a movie and not worry about money. It's such an impure art form. And I guess that's the biggest sacrifice, because if I want something to look like what I want, I would paint it, and I wouldn't have to deal with anybody. and I wouldn't have to get money from anybody, and I wouldn't have to deal with bad notes, and I wouldn't have to deal with all these different egos. But you step into the film realm and you say, you know what, you're taking on all these things, and the kind of filmmaker I am, which is, being independent and going after the stuff that makes me happy. I wouldn't say I get brought like the Oscar ready script. I get brought a script that's AA. It needs it needs a sponsor. It's a drunk script. There's probably bad people involved, and you're gonna have to manage bad people and solve this problem of the script. Why is it not working? You see the potential in it. You're gonna have to bring it out and coach it there. So there's a lot of psychology involved too. So I'm hoping that by the time I get to set and I'm working with an actor, like I did this movie, Barely Lethal, with Samuel Jackson, Haley Steinfeld, a lot of great actors were in it. That, not that it shoots itself, but like, you've got these wonderful people there. Now you just put them in there. They know exactly what they're going to do. They're professionals, and you are there to just bear witness to, like, hopefully the fruits of your labor. But a movie like that had challenges. Haley was a child actor still, about to turn 18, but she was still working limited hours. So she could only work so many in a day, which meant she couldn't work 12 hours a day, because she's the lead. She's in every scene. So it informed the way I had to shoot the movie, which was a lot of block shooting. So I'd have to shoot Haley's coverage out and then go back and shoot over a body double, which meant I had to start cutting the scene in a way it was like her head, his head, her head, his head, as opposed to long takes with two people. It just changes the nature of the language of film based on those practical things. So there's always something that comes up that kind of dictates the most organic way you tell a story when you don't have money to throw at the problem, or time. Like Samuel Jackson was in the movie, but we had exactly 10 days. That was it. And thankfully, he liked me so much, he skipped a day of golf with Obama at the time to give me an extra day. Yeah. I was like, wow, Sam Jackson giving you an extra day, that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you're just like, all right, man, you're pretty cool. Like, if somebody loves something and they believe in it, that's what you want, that they're going to do anything and everything to give their all, and that's what you as a director have to cultivate, is belief, positivity. So much of your job is you're just PT Barnum trying to sell. You're just like, you have to believe in it more than anybody. You have to have endless passion and energy, that you are, even 11 hours into a day, you're still on your feet, bouncing around, eager to get it done and not complaining, and I think it's not a easy job in a sense where you can just, set it and forget it. It is a constantly challenging, mentally challenging, emotionally challenging thing, because there's so much rejection. And there's so much, I've probably developed hundreds of movies, and maybe I've directed 5 and maybe, produced a few more, but like, that's a crazy batting average. This business is mostly rejection. So there's a certain amount of fortitude that comes into it. It's a weird business. It's not like anything else. It's like, if you're making steaks for somebody and only 2 out of 175 see it through the door, it's frustrating. But you just try and you keep trying. And timing is also a huge factor in why things do or do not get made. Like Fanboys, thankfully it happened at the right time, and fortuitously people got behind it and had the right momentum. You need some momentum, and then somebody will like compete with somebody else, and then somebody's like, we can't let them have it, and then they give you the money to make it. It's not like someone's like, I like it, I'm gonna write a check right now. You have to like play people against each other, and it's a whole game to this sale of a script and a movie. And yeah, ultimately it's a very impure art form.
Kyle, thank you. That was extreme. That was fascinating and eloquent. And what I heard was, like, you are very much a coach to like this entire team of people, and this idea of like, you keep things flowing and you keep things moving, and then you recognize the connectedness aspect of everyone that's involved and trying to
Yeah.
make those connections and can kind of deliver it to the end vision. Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome, man. Yeah.
Thank you. No, that's what I feel like every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does this person need? What does this department need? And at the end of every day, I try to shake everyone's hand and say, thank you. You have to constantly keep giving and be putting yourself out there and constantly being present. You can't go into your head. You can't get lost in an idea. You have to say, all right, we're right here. It's freezing. It's snowing. It's -11.
Mm.
I have to get these 3 shots. They're going to shut us down at 11. I have 7 actors and they're all shivering. The heater just broke.
Oh,
You just got to like figure it out. You just have to, and you have to be like, if you don't believe, no one else is going to believe. And if you say, oh, yeah, you're right, it's hard, let's skip it, they will all gladly pack up the truck and go.
Yeah.
Let's close the camera now. You're right. Let's not. So you have to care more than anyone. And hopefully that is infectious and transpires, and then they care. Like I was, the cerebral directors. I don't, it's hard unless you have a lot of money and you can just keep throwing money and trying and trying, so it's doesn't work for me.
Wow. That's nice. Yeah, yeah. And you talked about Fanboys, and I'm not as familiar. I've seen it twice, thanks to Zach kind of introducing me to Fanboys. So the Fanboys is very much like for me, it's a movie about a quest. So
Yeah.
and right, and you have companions that go on a quest, on a very, very worthy quest, an awesome one. But like, would you mind, because I'm not as familiar with it, but like sharing it, how Fanboys came to your life, how you're able to keep
Yeah.
the vision of the movie like going.
So I was a student at NYU, and it was in 1997, 98 maybe. And I read on Ain't It Cool News about a script called Fanboys that someone named Ernest Cline had written, who was at the time a slam poet, and he was Austin based, a friend of Harry Knowles. And he wrote the script called Fanboys about these Star Wars fans who are going to break in to watch The Phantom Menace before it comes out. And I'm just a student at film school. I was like, oh, I love that. That's a cool idea. I want to see that movie. Years later, 6 years later, a friend of mine is like, hey, you're a huge Star Wars fan. Would you be interested in checking out this movie, Fanboys? I was like, what do you mean? Like the script? I was like, explain. They're like, well, I'm getting the rights to do this. And, would you check it out? Would you consider it? And I directed one other movie, an independent film prior to that. And I was like, I don't have to read it. I'm in. But yeah, and I got the script and it had so much heart. And Ernie has become such a good friend and he's a wonderful storyteller. And it was an early script of his, and it needed work. And we all were learning on it. So we had to really, it just organically evolved as we added people to the team. And we became the team, just like the characters in the movie. We forged a group that had to go on a quest. And it was this impossible journey. And as the script kept evolving, the dream kept getting more and more possible. And that's what I realized, you just have to keep working at something. So, Ernie's script at one point, it was, Linus wasn't dying, it ruse to get people to go on this trip. And the Weinsteins much later actually pitched this idea when they were trying to recut the movie, that he was duping his friends. But it was disingenuous. I think if you're going to talk about how someone has cancer, you can't be like, fooled you.
yeah.
The origin of the script did come from, Ernie's mother was sick and was battling with cancer, and he contemplated, if something like that happened to him, he'd never get to see something like the new Star Wars movie. When you're a huge Star Wars fan, you start to think about, well, I miss the return of something I love. Well, I miss this big opportunity. And cancer's a horrible, horrible thing. And it came from such a real, honest place. It was like, this has to be the core of the movie, and you can't really deviate from that for a joke. So we hung it on that. A friend of ours, Adam Goldberg of the Goldbergs, and just did Muppets Mayhem. we went to NYU together. Adam's a great comedy writer. And after I'd done some drafts with one of the producers, Matt Patricio, we were on Adam to do some work on the script, and Adam took it to another level. And it was a team process. And ultimately it became the script it was. And then when you're on set, you're writing, every night to try and address problems that may arise, location changes, actor changes, schedule changes. Oh, we have to shoot this scene at night now. And, it's the middle of the night and you wouldn't have a store open in the middle of the night. So now it's got to be here. It's just have to constantly deal with whatever production reality throws you. And so it was a big cast of characters. And as someone was cast, we would also try to shape it to their voice and what they could bring and maximize what their talents were. So the process of Fanboys was, it took a few years before we were even on set making the movie. And numerous times it felt like it was never going to happen. Also, you're dealing with Lucasfilm. Major factor was they control the IP, and everyone did not want to step on George Lucas's toes. You need George Lucas's blessing. And, once I got a great cast together, Kevin Spacey was one of the producers, and he had a company that's making a lot of movies called Trigger Street. And they were very influential in helping George say yes and helping the movie find a home. There was Fox interested, Spielberg and DreamWorks were interested. I think, and this deal was structured in the middle of the night while everyone was sleeping. So Weinstein wanted the movie, so that way when everyone woke up, Fox and Spielberg and nobody could get involved. Like, he had to have the deal in the middle of the night done. And I know the guy negotiating, his house was on fire. He's like, I don't give a crap if your house is on fire, and he was like,
Wow.
fire trucks were coming, and he was like, finish this fucking deal. So it was like aggressive. People wanted this movie, and Weinstein Company got it, and that was its own set of issues. But at that point, you're like, yay, we're making a movie, and you have no idea what they're going to throw at you next. And, one of the first combos they had was, we really want a title like Wedding Crashers. And I'm like, yeah, Fanboys. And they're like, no, how about My Greatest Adventure? And you're like, no, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Another one was Trippin'. And you're like,
Oh my gosh.
Trippin'? And they're like, yeah, take out the G and put an apostrophe at the end. You're like, Trippin'? What? Did I just sign a deal with the devil? What are you talking about? Like, it's called Fanboys. I don't know. Do you not know what this is? Like, you don't know what a fanboy is? Like, that is as close as you can get to Wedding Crashers. It's like a whole other list of problems, emerges when you're making a movie with people that, they wanted it, but did they know what they were making? They loved it because it had so much heart and it had indie vibes, but then they're like, let's make this a big, broad comedy. Let's make fun of Star Wars fans, which is not the best thing to do once you've just gotten George Lucas to sign off. So they wanted an opening crawl that was like Fanboys and looked like a dictionary, like a term for losers who can't get laid and live in their mother's basement. You're like,
Oh
are
my
you trying to
God.
offend the fan base as the movie starts? So
Wow.
people just didn't get it. And you're trying to just constantly push people away from bad ideas, entertain them, hope they never bring them up again, hope they forget, hope they get fired in the 6 months while you're stalling. There are a lot of, I was going to say bad people, but I'll say not great storytellers in the storytelling business.
Yeah.
No.
I look at Fanboys in a couple of ways, and if I'm way off on this, Kyle, please correct me. The adventure piece, like Chris said, is spot on. I also, in the same way that I feel like, well, not I feel like, a lot of people do, Galaxy Quest is a Star Trek movie.
Awesome.
I look at Fanboys as a Star Wars movie, but I look at it as almost not only a love letter to fandom, but a love letter to Star Wars, if that's accurate or not.
Very much so. Yeah. Like, they were filling these different roles of characters. There are parallels in the themes and the way it takes place. The first Star Wars, it's not like they sit in a house and defend a base the whole movie. They're
Right.
they're on an adventure. It's called
Mhm.
to adventure.
Yep.
It is a road movie. They get in the space truck and they drive across the galaxy. Essentially that's what they're doing. And so there is that, you know, travel and migration aspect to the journey, which is, you know, the hero's journey. So there are some parallels, and a lot of the four characters, I see myself in all four characters. You try to put that in as much as possible. Um, yeah, it's just like, even though it's not about you, how do you make, how do you relate to it? You know, so invariably you're going to put yourself in there, especially if you're contributing to the writing of it and the casting of it and you're making it. Um, it becomes your sensibilities, your sense of humor. Um, you shape the tone. You know, as a filmmaker, you are the author of the tone, the pace, the texture of it, vibe of it, the feel of it. You're responsible for all that, and you have to keep everybody honest to also protect those things. I think a lot of people are like, "Yeah, I'm making a movie, and you got it," you know, and then they're just eating Twizzlers in the corner, and you have to make sure people are like protecting what you need. And you, I'm not a difficult person anyway. I get along with almost everyone, and I've never had a problem with an actor. But I am definitely, when something is not lining up with what it needs to be, I will push people, you know, and I never yell, but I am persuasive and forceful and pretty clear in what needs to be done. And Fanboys was, you're constantly battling to keep it on track,
Well,
because I had a very clear vision of what it should be, which was extra disheartening when you finish the movie and it tests really well. And the studio's even like, "You did what you promised. Thank you so much. We're gonna try a few things." And you're just like, okay. You know, we left this one screening in New Jersey, and Harvey Weinstein was like, "That's the best movie experience I've had all year." The audience was buzzing, they were flipping out. I'd previously screened the movie at Star Wars Celebration in London, and it was thousands of fans. There was like 7 minutes standing ovation. I filmed it and I sent it
wow.
to the studio, and they still like, "Well, we have some ideas." And you're like, "Okay, what are your ideas?" And they're like, "We want more Seth Rogen. Can we get him in a fat woman suit? Can there be mud wrestling?" And you're just like,
Oh my God.
"Okay." And then they're like, "Yeah, and we want to recreate the YouTube sensation of the Filipino prisoners dancing that went viral." And you're like, "All right, YouTube wasn't around in 1998. What does that have to do with our movie?" And like, "Yeah, but it's fun." And you're like, "Okay, and what are your other notes?" And you're like, you're just going on like, "Let's have Harry Potter in this movie." And you're like,
Oh my
"Okay, Harry
gosh.
Potter didn't exist yet.
Yep.
It's 1998 once again." It's just like, do you even think about these notes before you say them out loud? Um, it was a lot of things like that. And they're like, it's like, one of the notes was amazing. It was really amazing. They told me Deuce Bigelow, the trailer for Deuce Bigelow was the greatest trailer they'd ever seen in their life. And we need a trailer like Deuce Bigelow. And they told me that I should put a monkey in the trailer, even though there's no monkey in the movie. People love monkeys and people love vomiting. So let's do a monkey vomit gag. And I was like, "Oh my God, is this real?" It's like, "Is this real?" It's like, "Is there a hidden camera here?" Like, these were like real notes. And they're like, "It doesn't have to be in the movie, just for the trailer. People won't even know it's not in the movie. Just got to get him in the seats." And so there was a lot of like unhinged ideas, you know, where you're just like, "No, I'm not doing that," you know. Or there's like, "Deal, if you do this thing, we'll give you an extra 2 days to do this." You know, there's a couple of deals like that in the making of the movie. You know, we had to put in the mantina so I could get a couple more days of shooting. You know, like, you're just bartering for your survival at this point. We're like, "All right, we'll cut it down. We'll try to not make it as big of a set piece." But there were like deals, you know, they really wanted to turn it more into like a set piece comedy, which those things were
Mm.
in that era, like Road Trip and stuff like that. And so um you constantly have to, you know when to pick your battles and when to fight your battles and pick your battles. And but it was a, yeah, it was a wild behind the scenes.
Well, thank you for fighting the way you did to keep the integrity of that movie, because if anything close to some of those ideas got to that movie, it would just wouldn't be the same. And I've told people before, maybe it's just because I've seen the movie so many times, and I don't know the exact number. I'm sure it's over 40 for sure. But the movie to me is one massive quote. It's like Dumb and Dumber in the sense that just every line's a quotable line. Like I think there's a couple scenes that I love, and one scene in particular is when the two Star Trek fans come into the Hole in the Wall comics and they're looking around. And Dan Fogler's character Hutch goes, "What can I do for you, Garfunkel?" And he goes, "Yeah, how much for the?" He sees a little, little mock Star Trek phaser in the cabinet. And goes, "How much for the phaser pistol?" And he goes, "It's we don't hawk Trek here." And he goes, "Well, if you don't hawk the Trek, why do you have it?" And he says, "We use it to suss out Trekkie bitches such as yourselves. Get the hell off our land."
Yeah,
That whole scene is just hysterical. I mean, I love all the characters. Hutch is my favorite. The dude, I
yeah,
mean, is just a riot. And Dan Fogler had to have been just hilarious every single day on set.
absolutely hilarious. I saw Dan in a headshot. He had just I think he was nominated for a Tony Award at the time, or he had a hit play on Broadway. And he hadn't done much film work, but I saw his headshot and he had like a bow tie. And I was like, who is this guy? This guy's amazing. And so I flew to New York and we met and he was like, I'm in. I'm your Han Solo, and I was like, all right, you're in, And then at first people were like, who's this guy? Broadway, fuck him. He doesn't have any credits, and then you're like, then he wins a Tony and like, oh, okay, maybe we should listen to you. Um, I do have good instincts when it comes to casting. And if you just know if somebody's speaking to you in that way for whatever reason, and it makes the character come alive in 4 dimensions, then that's who you cast. Obviously, the other thing I've learned over the years is, bad people can ruin the whole thing.
Mm.
So it's, a lot of times I am casting based on the best decent human. You can tell if someone's going to be a problem, they probably are going to be a problem, and you probably don't want that problem. And you have to limit the number of problems you have when you're making a movie, because they're, like I said, they're hard enough to make without adding, bonus problems to the obvious ones that are definitely going to come up. So if you can bring good people into the mix, and those guys became like a family, they hung out all the time. We would go to like shady flea markets and buy weapons and ninja stars and pellet wars in the hotel, and they were very close. It wasn't like everyone just goes to their hotel room and goes to bed and keeps themselves. They got along. They became fanboys. So
Well, that translated on screen for sure.
good.
Because those four guys, you would have thought they grew up together. They're massive, massive nerds together, and the chemistry of those four was fantastic. And then obviously you have a young Kristen Bell thrown in there, who I thought added a lot to it. She was phenomenal. You could see all that for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was great being a part of that. They were awesome. So yeah, Fogler's hilarious. He's always going to surprise you, and you're just like, what the hell is he doing? And it's good.
This is a beautiful reflection on Fanboys. I love so much of what you said, like integrating people that are good people that have good characters, like into your projects, and then you are very much going through your own parallel like quest when you're creating Fanboys, like as the characters are going through their quest in the movie. You had just a beautiful, reflective, and contemplative, I think, thoughts on Fanboys and how it's affected you, how it's kind of formulated you now. So thank you for sharing that. That's just,
Thank you. You know what?
yeah.
I think the hardest part of the business can be very hard, very lonely. Unless you are real, it'll crush you. So I find it's just, you tell the truth, tell the real story. People, either they respond to it and they appreciate it, or if it's too much for them, then probably shouldn't, be, if you're reflecting for business purposes, then it's probably not the right person to work with. I like to be super open and be like, here were the challenges of this movie. Here's how we navigated them. Every movie's different. It's not like a website. It's a living, breathing thing. Like you put a circus show together, and like you're gonna travel to these different places, and you better learn stuff every day on it, or you're not doing it right. And I like to be very, yeah, like you said, meditative.
Yeah.
I know exactly what mistakes I made. I know what mistakes other people made. And if I'm not real about that, then I'm not going to grow or be better the next time around. So, um, yeah, with that, I learned you do need to stick to your truth on something, or people will absolutely impale the heart of it and mutate it into something it's not, and the final version of the movie is very close to the spirit of what I wanted. We got the movie back. They gave us 36 hours to recut the movie. If we slept, let me say we, it was me. If I slept, that meant I had less time to cut the movie. It was like a game. Like, fine, you win, your cut's better, but take our cut and turn it back into your cut. And sign a piece of paper. We had to sign a note that went into the trades. Dana Bernetti, who ran Trigger Street, and myself, that said Harvey Weinstein is a Jedi Knight. He wanted us to call him a Jedi Knight in the press. So then we could get our movie back. And I did. And then they let us cut for 36 hours. And I couldn't get everything back in. But thankfully, I paid attention even when they were ruining the film and I wasn't involved day to day. I took notes on every cut and I knew exactly what I should keep or I shouldn't. And some stuff they did was good, not a lot, but I kept those things. If something's good, I'm going to keep it. Some of the things they did were things I wanted to do. I was like, I want to recut this and do this. And they're like, you don't have any money to do it. And then they go do it. And you're like, okay, well, I'll use that now. Thanks. So yeah, you just survive. It's just you take the best of literally everything you have, and everybody wins if it's good and everybody loses if it's not. And you don't get your ego and set it aside and make the best movie. Doesn't matter whose idea it is. So that challenge of making the final cut was hard because I was like, I'm just going to reinstate the heart and soul of the film. And I'm never going to get all the details in every single moment that were in the last one back in it the way I had it, the right nuanced, paced, toned way. But I got the big elements back in and saved the movie,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Kyle, when Zach and I, we were talking about you like last night, like Zach and I, right? And so we discovered that you're an author, and
Yeah.
and so I was curious. I was like, well, Zach, what did he write? And so Zach was sharing. Oh, he wrote this, and he wrote the Dungeons and Dragons like Heroes Feast. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, he wrote Dungeons and Dragons. Zach said he wrote Dungeons and Dragons Heroes Feast. So I said, okay, Zach, just can you wait a moment? Hold on. And I said, Zach, can you FaceTime me? Because I had been working
No way.
on this last week. I had been planning Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving in the US. So
That
so my
turkey's good.
yeah. So so my daughter and I were going through this, and we're like, okay, we're gonna make the pie, a pie in here. And then last week I had made like everything soup. So I'd been actively like
That's one of my
working.
creations. Everything soup. Yep.
Yeah. I'd been actively like working out of this cookbook for the last like couple years. So it
Cool.
was totally by coincidence. It's like Zach and I were like thrilled, like wow, we have this. So like so cool.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah.
So the first D&D book I did was called
Yeah.
Art and Arcana, and I hadn't played D&D in like 15 years, and I had kids and just didn't have a group to play with. And I don't go out, I don't drink, I'm not a party person, never done a drug in my life, or smoked a cigarette in my life. There's no time for that if you want to win. You just got to stay focused. I always say to people when I speak, I'm like, not a single substance you put in your body is going to help your dream tomorrow. It's not going to help you tomorrow with what you want to do. So I don't have time for any of that shit. So I just focus. I like games. I'll play games and keeps your mind sharp. And so we got back into Dungeons and Dragons. And at the time I was like back in love with D&D. And I said, where's the book? What have I missed for 15 years? And there was no book. There was no book on the history of this brand. There were just various like Art of Dragonlance, Art of Forgotten Realms, and it was all spread out, and there was nothing that unified them all like the One Ring. And I said, I want to make the book that tells the history of D&D. And I'm not an expert on D&D. I just love it. And I think the worst advice you can give someone as a writer, people always give this advice. They're like, hey, kid, write what you know. And that's such trash advice. That is the worst advice you can give somebody, because that means stay where you are, tread water. What you should do is say, write what you want to know and write where you want to be. And so I was like, I want to become an expert on Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm not. I want to learn everything about it. I just want to stay up all night till 1 a.m, reading everything I can about this subject till I am the master. At least the master enough to write the story. And I'm not the master of all D&D. I don't know. There are people that know far more than me. But to write this book, I had to become the master of what I needed to know. And that's what we wrote to. And I got a great team together. John Peterson is the foremost expert on gaming and D&D history. Michael Whitwer had written a really wonderful biography on Gary Gygax. And I reached out to Michael first. I said, hey, Michael, because he loves Star Wars. I know his brother, Sam Whitwer. I was like, Michael, I love your book. You want to work on a book about the history of D&D? And he's like, yes, he's like, but I don't think we could do it without John. I was like, sure, bring John in, And then when Sam found out I was working on a book with his brother, he's like, you jerk, you're doing a book with my brother? I love D&D. So I was like, all right, well, then you're in too. So that became our team. And that became like 4 guys going on a journey. We're like, we're going to make this book better because it's all of us, because we're going to make them a think tank. And we're going to look at it from various different ways, prismatically. There's going to be no stone left unturned. If I wrote it by myself, it'd be one thing. And if John wrote it by himself, it'd be something else. But because we did it together and we vetted everything and challenged everything and brought different experiences to it, it became a great book. And that's what got nominated for a Hugo Award. And we sold a lot of copies of it. And our publisher was really, really happy with it. And the D&D community responded really well. And then our publisher was like, hey, what about a cookbook? And at first, a few years ago, I was at a Barnes & Noble. I saw a Warcraft cookbook, and I was like, what is this? Like, what is fantasy cooking? I don't get this at all, And I was like, so wrong, because publisher pitched it to us. And then I was like, well, let me think about this. And, there was some groans from the group. We're like, I don't know. And I was like, wait a second. I started to really think about it in terms of as a way to talk about all the lore we know. Let's not make a Wookiee cookie type cookbook, Boba Fett Chini, we're not trying to chew baklava, it's like we want to make food from the various realms of Dungeons and Dragons, and let's tie it to their holidays, their culture, their religions, the different races, the different locations, different planets of different topography, different levels of technology. And like suddenly it was like all this stuff makes sense. We could write it from. We're writing a book that should be used as a tool. It's a cooking tool. It is first and foremost functionally as a cookbook, but it's a lore book. It's like if you're going on an adventure and you're going to encounter, woodland elves, maybe that's what should be on your table rather than Mountain Dew and Doritos. It was adding another, and D&D is all about immersion. It's all about bringing the group that's at the table into a deeper connective place. So like this what's common? You have 5 or 6 people at a table. You're definitely going to be eating food over the course of 4 or 5 hours. Why not be good food, themed food? So it made total sense. And then we set out to do that, and that became a New York Times bestseller. And it turned it into a cooking show, which was great. So I'm in all the episodes of that. That's on Plex and Freevee right now. But I think it's on Samsung channel. So D&D has its own sub channel. There's 21-hour episodes. So
wow,
different celebrities come on and do recipes from the cookbook, and we tease some from the second cookbook. And that one's called Flavors of the Multiverse, and that came out last fall. And then this fall we put out this one, The Deck of Many Morsels, just came out. And this is cool because it's like 50 recipe cards.
Oh, wow.
So you don't want to necessarily always have your book out on your counter with your greasy fingers, but you set up like one card, and on the back, it just tells you what it is. And it's like high stock cards, and it's really cool. And you'll like, You know, it's simple. So there's 10 recipes in this one that aren't in book 1 or book 2. And I guess I can say I'm working on book 3 right now, which is cool. So that's one of the 3 book projects I'm currently writing. So I like to, whenever I have like downtime or the movie industry is destroying itself, um, I'll work on books, because there's something great about just doing it, not waiting for people, you know. The movie industry is in like a serious crisis, and it's, you know, it's debatable as to whether or not we'll ever return to what it was.
Mm.
So it's disheartening, but storytelling is storytelling. So I'm doing that and working on another D&D project, which is fiction. It's not nonfiction like the previous stuff I've written. Although, you know, there's elements of nonfiction in the Heroes Feast series, because we're extrapolating on what's been in the lore, and we're making up new stories and new characters and new meaning behind it. But it's focused through that cookbook lens and the culinary cultural aspect of D&D. This is like a true story, you know. It's a hardcover graphic novel that'll be coming. I don't know when, but soon, and it's cool. And it has ties to the old animated show. Which, and then yeah, so D&D is like a big part of my life. And then we also are this year putting out this. So this is the 50th anniversary edition of Art.
Wow.
So we just put this one out. I think now if you buy it on Amazon, it's this new version, and it adds gatefolds and updates some stuff. But it's a pretty cool new cover, revised cover. But it's got these big gatefolds with old maps and art from things that we had unearthed since the book came out in 1998 and 2018, 1998. Well, that's Fanboys. But yeah, we've got some like maps and things like that that are now featured in here. And so that's cool. That new edition, I think it just came out a couple of weeks ago.
That cover looks like, is that from a Dragonlance? Like,
It's a reference to the old red box, you know.
okay. Yeah.
And this is a pretty iconic painting. And the original cover was black, and we kind of changed some things up on it, but it's got this new 50th edition, and I'm not sure how many they're printing of these, but it's cool. So that's the one
beautiful
this year. It's every time I flip through it, I can be a fan again, and I'm like,
yeah,
man, I love D&D, and that's what I want. I want people to look at it and it to be a time capsule and nostalgia play and take you back to some place in your life, and you're like, I remember this old video game. I remember this old module. I remember this old issue of Dragon magazine, that cover, and I remember playing this character, and I remember sitting on so-and-so's floor. You know, I wanted to trigger those type of memories. You know, we did a sequel to that book too called Lore and Legends, which was exploration of the modern D&D phenomenon from 2012 to essentially 2023, as 5th edition was wrapping up. So it was a look at the modern phenomenon, why an analog game became a superstar in the digital age. Like, why are people playing a pencil and paper game when they have every computer game at their disposal? Like, why are people getting around a table and doing this? And there was a lot of things conspired to do that, from like the nostalgia and the pandemic and things like Stranger Things, but also the game itself became better. Why did the game become better? Why are people playing this game? So that was another fun book. It's a proper sequel to Art and Arcana. And then I'm working on something else, which is Star Trek related. And so that one's cool.
You had me at Star Trek.
Yeah. No, and I watch a lot of Star Trek. I probably watch about 2 hours of Star Trek content a day. Star Wars it feels like Star Wars doesn't like me. You know what I mean? Star Wars just like feels like it's just turned its back on certain fans and itself. Star Wars doesn't even know what it wants to be anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked about that a number of times here on our podcast about the direction in which Star Wars has gone, right? Versus the I don't want to call it the pure, but like the original Star Wars that the fanboys had, right? And when they were going out to see episode one, or trying to steal a copy of the first cut of rough draft cut of episode one. I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because I wanted to segue, if we can, for a second, back to Fanboys, because in that movie, not only, like I said before, what I consider like a Star Trek versus Star Wars movie, which is, Star Trek versus Star Wars is like a nerd civil war. I mean, it really gets the best of people all riled up. But in that movie, there were some massive, massive science fiction legend cameos, including Billy D. Williams, Shatner, and late Carrie Fisher. I'm not telling you this. I'm telling the people watching, if they haven't seen Fanboys, because obviously I'm curious as to your reaction on getting them in the movie and being able to direct scenes with these iconic actors of science fiction.
I was, we wrote these things in not knowing who we were going to get, hoping, when Billy D. Williams was in, we're like, amazing. Carrie Fisher was incredible. I remember the one of the craziest nights, right? It's early March. And we're in New Mexico, and they say, I've this dinner set up with Billy D. Williams. So me and two of the producers are gonna have dinner with Billy D. Williams, who just flew in. It's like one of the first days of shooting. I think it was day 3. And so, like, amazing. We're gonna meet Billy D. Williams. We're gonna have dinner. He's flew in. He's gonna shoot tomorrow. This is like a dream. And then they say, oh, we scheduled this phone call with you and Carrie Fisher at the same time. I'm like, what? Who does that? Why would you do that? So I have to like be late to the dinner with Billy D. Williams, and I don't want to like cut off my call with Carrie Fisher prematurely, short, but she wants to talk. So here we are. We're like supposed to be like a 15-minute convo, and we're like 55 minutes in, and she's telling me about George Lucas bringing, Princess Leia buns to her 50th birthday, how her marriage with, Paul Simon fell apart, and you're just like, oh my gosh, she's telling me everything here. Okay, and then I go downstairs and I sit down at the table. I'm out of breath. And Billy D. Williams is like, and that's all I've got to say about Star Wars. I'm like, what? And then everyone like afterwards, like, what did he say? And they're like, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't like Star Wars like you do. I'm like, what? He tells you all these stories, and then nobody remembered what he told. Like, it was just like they were the wrong people to be having dinner with him. It should have been me. So that was frustrating, but getting to work with them was a dream come true. I mean, all these people I'd looked up to since I was a little kid. First movie memories I have are with Carrie Fisher, and Star Trek, as I remember seeing at such an early point in my life, and wasn't my full choice to disparage Star Trek the way I did in Fanboys, but I was angry at the time, and we had the rights to include Star Trek, and we were gonna like bring Star Trek fans in, and they were gonna bring their own costumes just like the Star Wars fans did, and there was this rivalry. And then about 8 days before we were shooting that, in the middle of production, Paramount Viacom was like, you can't use Star Trek. I'm like, what? So we don't have the budget to go make all these costumes and do this whole thing. The fake Ricardo Montalban statue stayed the same. But it had to be like fake Star Trek fans with not the real, Federation Starfleet logo on uniforms. And it was really frustrating. So at the time, that's why Seth Rogen's like, the whores at Viacom, he's going on Viacom. It's because they screwed us, And I was I'm just like lay into them, and he's just like, the freaking whores at Viacom. Like, he was pissed too. So that's why we went so hard on Trek in that moment.
But Kyle, I will say though, I think it really worked. Like, I mean, I love both. I grew up on both, as many of us did.
Yeah.
I think it worked. I was never in any way like quote unquote offended by the way everything happened. Like that scene where they're in Riverside, Iowa at that statue, and then they get into that fight because Seth Rogen goes, well, Han Solo's a bitch. And Dan Fogler goes, what'd you just say? And he goes, Han Solo's a bitch. Nobody calls Han Solo a bitch. And they start fighting and everything. And then that moment where the boys escape in Hutch's van and drive away. And my favorite line in the whole movie, no joke, is where Hutch goes, yeah, did you see him? I rolled him into the dirt like he's my freaking tauntaun. So, I mean, they're just, to me, it worked. It really did. I don't think you guys needed the official Star Trek license, because everybody knows exactly what
Yeah.
was being talked about. It just, I think it added to the, what I would call like the satire of the movie, right? Like
Good,
just this,
good.
it's the movie, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, at times I felt like the movie was kind of making fun of itself a little bit at times, and there's some
Yeah.
satire in there. Everything worked for
Making
me.
fun of Star Wars fans too.
Yeah.
I mean, while they are Star Wars fans, there's a bit of ridiculousness to the seriousness with which they do everything.
Yeah.
Pressure about it. So yeah, and like getting to work, even Ray Park was a friend. He came in to play like the security guy.
Yeah.
But we were close with Mark Hamill. He wanted to do it,
Wow.
but he's like, I'm not going to play like head of security. It just feels weird. We couldn't find the right thing for him, and Harrison Ford gave permission for the 6 days, 7 nights billboard.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
His permission
He's
for
never
that.
made a bad movie.
Yeah,
He
and Carrie
tried mine.
Fisher gave permission and George for us to use the I Know from Carrie Fisher, Return of the Jedi audio recordings, because we did the sound mix up at Skywalker Ranch, and so we got those, which was amazing. But yeah, working with those legends. William Shatner, he flew in. We had him for a day, and he's like, "What's all this about Star Wars versus Star Trek?" And you're like, "What?" He's like, "Why are you making this up?" And we're like, "We're not making it up." But he didn't know there was like a rivalry. He like was like,
Yeah.
"Why are you agitating this thing?" It's like, they all get along. I'm like, "No, they don't. What are you talking about?" And he thought it was like this copacetic, like everyone's cool with each other. I'm like, there's a rivalry. Each one thinks the
Yeah.
other one's better than the other, And at that time, Star Wars is top of the food chain,
Mm.
It's like Star Wars is USA and Star Trek was Canada next door. Like that's what it was, I don't know what to tell you, but I love Star Trek, but at this time, in 1998, that's the reality, man. And he went with it and he was amazing, but like
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny that he didn't know there was a rivalry, you know.
And Danny Trejo was in the movie too, which was hilarious. I mean, him playing that guy, where getting him high off on the side of the
Keith,
street or whatever. Yeah, he was hilarious.
Yeah, Danny was incredible. Yeah, we had some really wonderful people in the movie. Thank God. The script is your best calling card. If you have a good script and it's funny and you get one or two people, then everyone feels like they have to be a part of it.
How much? I'm. This is a really technical question, so I apologize. You may not know this. Maybe you do. I'm not sure. But so obviously you guys have Shooter McGavin, right? Who's the the kind of, I don't want to say he's not sleazy car salesman. He's a car salesman, owner of the car shop, and the amount of spray tan that would had to have been caked into his skin like data must have been an unbelievable amount. And he seemed
I
like
think
such a
they brushed
trooper.
it on him with makeup rather than actually spraying him. They just went
Okay. Yeah.
on the or amber makeup, and man, he was covered.
Yeah.
He was a great guy.
Yeah, I mean that's what's so great about this movie is obviously the movie is incredible, but the amount of people that you guys were able to bring in to play these cameo characters, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, it's Carrie Fisher! Oh my gosh, it's William Shatner!" Of course, Shatner plays himself, but I mean, it's a testament to the work that you all did, not only to make a great, amazing film, but to bring in people who played roles in these iconic sci-fi franchises that are being made fun of, and everything together. I mean, it just, like I said, it's the quintessential nerd movie.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's was a very special time. I'll always have good memories about it and suppress the bad ones.
Integrate the bad ones, and then that'll help you make even better decisions moving forward, right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. And this is awesome to hear, like your love of D&D and Star Trek and Star Wars. Are there any other science fiction, like either movies or franchises or ideas or books that have like resonated with you that you love?
Oh my God, it's just
So many. Yeah.
so many. It's endless. But there's all types of movies I love. I love Close Encounters, and I love Jaws, and I love non-sci-fi. Some of my favorite movies are just they're not genre. I love a lot of European cinema, Japanese cinema. I love a lot of animation.
Mm.
I love Nightmare Before Christmas. My
Mm.
kids love it, so it's probably a movie I watched hundreds of times. It's magical. It's a great musical. Um, I love 2001. I think it's not even a film. That's like the eighth wonder of the world. It's like, how did they make that? It's just incredible. Um, there's just it's like this year I've watched 360 films so far. I'm on this
Wow.
like I'm on this. I'm not like I get pulled into like watch this show. This is the next best show. This is and you're like it's not. This is not the next best show. This is like filler, and you're convincing yourself this is the best thing ever. There are great movies that have stood the test of time. I'm gonna stop watching all this new television that's getting shoved down my throat. I'm gonna go back and start watching movies I love again or movies I missed.
Mm.
So that's what I've been doing aggressively this year. Despite that, I still watched many series. I like the new Dune movie. I like the previous Dune movie. Um, I love Blade Runner. I love the Blade Runner 2049. That was a great movie. I could listen to that score over and over. There's so many different shades and styles of sci-fi and fantasy that I love. I write, working on some stuff like that. I'm working on some. I like the old monster movies. I'm working on like a genre mashup thing that's kind of if you mix Universal monsters and Quentin Tarantino and 21 Jump Street in a blender. That's more like me, more my sensibilities and taste, and it's got everything I love in it. And it's just like, what genre is it? You're like, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It's like it's this, it's everything. Um, and so I'm going back to trying to do movies that I write because yeah, I've written a lot and it hasn't gotten made, and I've rewritten almost everything I've done. The reason it gets to screen is probably because I got it there, with the things I've done to it. So I know what it takes to get something made. I know how to get something dialed in right. And I just got to that point in my life where I'm like, why am I waiting on all these stories I wanted to tell?
Mm.
Because these other things are maybe quote unquote easier because someone's bringing them to me. So that's what I'm trying to shift into is working on my own scripts and stories again. When I started out, that's what I was all about. And then, just trying to survive. You're just like, all right, I'll work on this movie. I'll help get this one made. I think I can get this one going here. You're trying to survive. Because like I said, it's not like someone's like, hey, do anything you want. What do you want to do? No one's coming to me with that scenario.
Mm.
You're basically kicking, screaming, scraping, trying to get budgets for things, and you're trying to find the path of least resistance and where there's momentum or someone else has some money or someone else has some script that you could start with. So it becomes like this, hard process where you're like, do I take the year and focus on this, or am I working on my thing? And so that's what I've been trying to get going with my own stuff again.
We would love to see you like bring your own writing to the screen. That would be wonderful.
Thanks.
That'd be beautiful to
Yeah,
see. And
when
yeah,
this, I'm like, I'm just buzzing with the stuff. I'm like, it's got it's good. It's just really good. I'm like, I need to be making this. Why am I waiting?
yeah,
This is like alive and funny and sad, and it's got everything. And that's what I love in movies. What movies can do, they can do everything all in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
100 minutes. That's when I find something special. I like music that makes you feel something. Is dancing an emotion? Yeah, it's fun, but is that the most complex thing? No. I'm attracted to music that has like an element of melancholy or nostalgia. There's a little more. There's just layers there. So I feel like if something has that and it can make you laugh and smile, that's even better. It's just
Yeah.
more depth rather than just working on one level.
Yeah.
It's a more complex emotion. You stub your toe and you're angry. you know, like that is an emotion, but it's just like it's one dimensional. Um, so yeah, I really want to get into like different types of stories. And then not comedy, you know. I love comedy. Maybe they have elements of comedy. But that's the other thing is like when you do so many movies that are in a quote unquote like genre or lane, they want you to stay in that lane. Like you can't do this. What do you mean you want to do a movie in another language? And you're like, yeah, I'll figure it out. Like it's a good story. You know, you like the script, so why wouldn't we do it? They're like, you don't know that language. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll figure it out. Like what? You know, there'll be an expert on set that does, and they'll give me a thumbs up. Did they say it right or did they flub their line? Like, you know, I want to do some different stuff. So
Yeah.
um, but they're not easy. I never kind of take the easy path. Um, when I should just do my own thing.
Mhm.
Is there in addition to the work that you've written and, you know, obviously would like to get to the screen, uh, is there a holy grail project for you that you would love to work on?
To work on like another IP.
Anything, yeah, whether it's an IP
Yeah, I mean,
or a specific
I have a
title or
Star
anything.
Wars trilogy that I've been developing that is what they should be making, to
Yeah,
be
I
honest.
was gonna say it's
Without
probably better than the
being
Disney
sounding
stuff.
arrogant, it's what they should it's exactly solves all the problems that are out there. It avoids all the landmines. It takes into account all the mistakes that have been made over the past few years and takes into account all the victories. And in looking at the nearly 50-year history of Star Wars, understanding it, like I think I have a pretty good understanding of Star Wars, enough where I could write the history of Star Wars. I understand, I think, on a molecular level. Um, like some people collect all the toys. I used to be a toy collector and stuff. I My hobby is just understanding Star Wars. That's my number one hobby is like getting to the core of Star Wars. Um, no matter what level it's on. And I have a great trilogy that I think is exactly what is needed in the next few years. Um, and I also have a standalone thing too, which I wanted to do as a novel 10 years ago. And then the company was sold. So that got blown up. That one's an awesome standalone in its own time period. And this other one is 500 years, 300 to 500 years in the future, depending on where you want it to be. And you don't even know it's Star Wars. You'll figure out Star Wars where you want. You're like, oh my God. It's just not. Right now, what we've got is George Lucas cover band, you know? Like that guy does a great Ringo up there on the drums, you know? And it's just like, oh, that's a pretty good George Harrison wig, you know? And they're just, look, there's very talented people working in Star Wars, but the biggest psychological thing that's happening is it's eating itself alive, and it has made no inroads into young people. You go into a classroom now and ask a bunch of fourth graders, are they into Star Wars? Maybe 2 out of 25. You know, 10 years ago, it was probably like 15, 16. And there are diminishing returns, and they keep doubling down on more of the same.
Yep.
And it's like they're afraid to be what they are. But Star Wars was like the most successful, attractive person in your neighborhood, you know? It had it all. And it's like, and that doesn't want to be. It's like wants to put tattoos on its face and shave half its head and expose itself naked in public. And you're like, dude, stop. Like, just stop. Okay. Stop. Get your shit together. Come over here with me. Let's talk. What's wrong?
Yeah.
What do you need? Let's get you back on track. Let's get you healthy again. Let's get you back out there in the world because I know what you can be. And it's not that right now. You know, so that's disheartening. So, you know, when you're a lifelong Star Wars fan and you're powerless to help it. So I was like, you know, I'm gonna develop this thing, and one day I'll have the opportunity. I don't need to direct it. I mean, I'd love to, but like, I don't care. I don't even care. I would just give it to someone and go, this is what you should make. I just want to go see it. You know, they're gonna pay me. I don't care. I just want to save it. I don't care about money. Save Star Wars. Like that's all I want. So that's a life quest. There's lots of other things I'd like to work on. Like I said, I'm working on this Star Trek thing, and I'm very passionate about Star Trek and why it pulls me in and why it's so comforting. And why I could basically leave Star Trek on television 24 hours a day on repeat. And I've never feel compelled to change the channel. Like, um, why is that? I wouldn't do that with Star Wars live action. Like, I don't want to watch Mando on loop, but I'll watch Next Gen on loop. What is that? What did they get right? Um, and why? And so this is like exploring, 60 years of the Star Trek phenomenon. So it's kind of similar to what we did with Art and Arcana and Dungeons and Dragons. And I think when I pitched it to people, they're like, "You're crazy. It's too big. It's too big of a topic. How are you going to do that?" But ultimately, it's just like anything else. It's curation. And I have to I wasn't a Star Trek expert. I'm still not, but I am obsessed. And so I know I'm going to make, with my co-author, the best book that's going to make you feel like you get it down to its core and takes you through, holds your hand through an incredible, journey through Trek's history, the way it's changed pop culture. I know I can write that, but I'm not going to tell you what so and so said to so and so on day 7 of shooting episode 18 of season 3 of Voyager. I don't know it like that, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's not what's important. Those are just behind the scenes battles, things like that. I'm trying to get into the soul of what Star Trek is, and as it's forward faced into mainstream culture, how it's communicated with pop culture at large, how it's changed our culture, our technology, our entertainment. Ultimately, Star Trek is, they set out to explore the universe, but it was a mission just to explore humanity. And when you understand it that simply, it's pretty profound. So that's one of the 3 books I'm working on now with my same publisher.
That's exciting.
That's a big undertaking.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to reading that. We're
At the
looking forward
same
to reading
time
that.
is also kind of bonkers, but you just kind of like jump between you just wear different hats and just shift gears and hope you don't lose your mind.
So I want to ask you about this too. You were an executive producer for Raiders, the story of the greatest fan film ever made. And I'm curious on your thoughts of the importance of fan-made films and the role that they play within fandom.
um a lot of people say Fanboys was a fan film. you know um it wasn't, because we made it professionally, but it had the heart and soul of a fan film, because
Yeah.
it was by fans for fans. um I think it's super important. I think there also has to be a level where you separate yourself from it as a storyteller. Like, a lot of people start storytelling. They write their own comic books. They tell their stories. They start in a place of emulation, uh, adoration. They love something and like, oh, I'm going to do my version of it. And that's how we learn. We take the familiar and we apply these things to it, and we learn a craft, and we're like, I want to make a short film, and you're going to learn about cinematography, you're going to learn about directing, working with actors, creating budgets, building schedules. You take the familiar and you're going to do that. So I understand the place, and a lot of people love something so much they don't know how else to get close to it. You look at why action figures took off in 1978 with Star Wars. People wanted those action figures that very first Christmas in 77, and there wasn't any. People wanted to take the experience home with them. They wanted connectivity. That's why licensing exploded. That's why licensing is so big on something. It's not because it's gross. It's because people want more of it. Dungeons and Dragons had a renaissance, an explosion of licensing. They probably went from like 4 or 5 licensees to, 50 more now, the past 10 years. Is because people are connecting with it. They want it. They want it on their Christmas tree. They want like pajamas. They want more material to read. They want things to absorb. it's because they're transfixed by it. They want to be immersed in it. You know, that's what happened to Star Wars in the late 70s. There was this explosion in ephemera and merchandise, and people wanted to take it home. And so the fan film is an extension of that. Like, you have the toys, but what else? You know, you've read the books, but what else? Like, you want to be in it, you know? And that's like something that VR and things like that will ultimately and hopefully like gift people. I would love to go to Rivendell and go into like in my VRs and spend a day and like not leave, rather than walk out onto Laurel Canyon Boulevard and like, you know, see someone get hit by a bus. Like, I'd much rather just live in a fantasy, you know. Obviously there's boundaries and there's distinctions and you have to come out of that, but to experience that would be cool, right? So that's why people make fan films. They want to get closer to the thing they love. You know, you're not doing it because you're like, I'm hoping to make money, because there's no money in it.
Right.
It's actually, it's just raw, pure passion. Cosplaying is a variant of that, you know, photographing yourself doing it. It's like there's all steps to how deep you can be immersed. You know, there's that place in Ticonderoga, you know, that Trek Ticonderoga. This
Yep.
guy's got the sets. I mean, like, that's the coolest expression of fandom. He like come up there and go hang out in engineering. It's like, that's crazy. You know, I love that. So that's another, that's how fandom's gotten to this other level now, that people have increased means and the information is shared, like the blueprints, the tech, how to build a stormtrooper outfit, build a R2 unit. You know, now it's like 20 years ago, you're like, oh, no, what? You know, people are figuring that out. Now you can go buy a kit and you can express your fandom in a whole different way. So the fan film it's really cool. But at a certain point, I mean, I don't think you can make a career out of that. You have to maybe take that as a starting point and see if you really want to keep making films or if you just love that fandom, you know? Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool medium. It's a cool genre.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I really loved hearing about your passion projects and your writing ideas and what you have planned internally in your mind for Star Wars and Star Trek. You There's a lot of like introspection that has gone into your answers on like what Star Wars means to you, like how it affected you and how you want to see it moving forward. Same with Star Trek. Like Star Trek means like different points to us at different points in our lives. It has like these kind of different aspects that hit us. So I I hope, like we both hope that you because there's so much energy but behind what you were saying with your Star Wars ideas. So we both hope like you take it and you keep moving it along, and it gets as far as it can go. I mean, just the fact that you said, hey, it doesn't matter who actually creates it, like if you get paid or not, it just means so much to you. So you've got just this huge amount of passion that's behind it. It's just
Yeah,
wonderful
I
to
have
hear.
nothing
Yeah.
to lose. I would just say, here's the story you should be telling right now,
Yeah.
based on me knowing this so intrinsically. And this is what it needs. And if you want it to be the thing that is the gold standard for entertainment, that brings families and people of all ages back to the theater and elicits what the original Star Wars did, um, it's escape and it's hope. And I'd say George would probably reduce Star Wars' most important message to hope. Um, and it's also it's fairy tale, it's fable. And I think people also forgotten that we're in this procedural era, and um it's heavy sci-fi, it's swerving into a lane it doesn't really operate best in. It's not built for that lane. And it's also something that you can't just make tons and tons of them. Disney purchased something and paid a lot of money for it, and then they need to feed the beast, like you're shoveling coal into train engine. You know, they got theme parks and they have all these things. They can't just turn the spigot off for 8 years and let it like die and then come back and trick people. They just have to do it right, you know, and doing more. Like Star Wars Visions, you know, some great stuff in it. I know it's experimental. Like half of them work, half don't, you know.
Yeah.
Watch Mandalorian, you know, 6 out of 8 episodes work in the first 2 seasons, and season 3, not many work, you know.
Yep.
Felt like it was very undercooked and it needed a second draft, you know. Ahsoka visually fits the Star Wars language, but again, was narratively needed more time to roast in the oven. There's good ideas, but they're not fully brought together. You know, you look at something like Acolyte, and maybe I'm being hard on it, but I can't be anything but honest. It has a good idea, but ultimately you get to the end of it and it's a show about hate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Star Wars is about love, intrinsically love. The core message of A New Hope, and so why George probably has no connection with the expanded universe, is it's about familial love. Luke does something that neither the Jedi nor the Sith would normally do. And that's why the Emperor couldn't anticipate what he was going to do. He couldn't foresee the familial bond that Luke put all his faith in to, you know, unlock his father. And that's the sacrifice Luke made for balance, you know. So then you get to the sequels, Luke probably wouldn't have started a new Jedi Order. I know George had major grievance with the expanded universe, and it's like, didn't you watch Return of the Jedi when he balanced the Force? Like, what's going on here? You know, so a lot of things were just thrown out the window in an effort to make more stories. And as much as George probably complains about it, he also greenlit it, you know, to keep the IP alive. But people got very passionate about it and obsessive about the canon. And so it started to cave in on itself. I remember I read one Star Wars book and they were talking about, there was like a TMZ in the Star Wars universe, and they were very angry at Jaina Solo because she was wearing Nerf leather, and, you know, it was like animal activists. And you're just like, you guys do not get Star Wars. What is happening here? What happened? You're talking about Nerf leather on TMZ and the Hollow Nightly News. You're like, oh my God. Like, you put on the original movie, watch it, and tell me if you think that's a good idea, you know? They were talking about how Ewoks in one book should be emotional support pets, like golden retrievers, for wounded rebel soldiers and amputee victims. Like, they're, first of all, they're cannibals. Second of all, like, this is what the level of fiction we're talking about now is. It plummeted to some really abysmally low places in terms of what type of story we're telling. We're telling a myth, you know, and you're talking about emotional support pets, you know. And you get to the end of Acolyte, and there's a character about to say I love you, and he gets choked out before he can say the words, which are the basic tenet of Star Wars. It was just an ultimately frustrating, and I felt like destructive series. And I think, you know, it did no favors, you know, for the fandom or the larger mythology. And while some sets and things look good, and there's actors I liked, and it ultimately have to be hard on it and say, you know, that was not the story to tell right now, you know. It has nothing to do with any of the social issues or anything. It's just like narratively, in its soul, it was the wrong story, you know. And that's what they have to get to, you know. You have to make decisions based on one thing, like, what is the thing we are trying to do with Star Wars, you know. If you're trying to check a lot of different things off, maybe that's not the best thing to be doing with Star Wars. Because if you try to be everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one.
Right. Yep.
And so that's what's disheartening. Not to say, like, filmmaking's hard, and there's beautiful stuff in all these shows, you know, and there's great work, there's great writing, there are great performances, they're smart people. But we're making content. We're content. It keeps coming out, keeps coming out. You got to stop and say, this is the ultimate franchise, the ultimate monomyth. This is it. You know, it's got to pass a lot of sniff tests before you should be green lighting. So, you know, whoever's making it, I like Simon Kinberg a lot. He's awesome. I'm glad he's making a trilogy. I think he's a great guy, and he gets it. I am excited for everything Dave does. I love Dave Filoni. He's been a tremendous steward and extension of George. Nobody knows George in Star Wars like Dave, you know. So I'm always excited for Dave Filoni stuff. I love the animated shows. I'm a huge fan of, you know, Clone Wars, Rebels. I thought Rebels was beautiful and fantastic. It was like watching an RPG, like a group of adventurers grow up, you know, and evolve. Whereas, you know, Clone Wars was narratively jumbled and a little all over the place, and that was the nature of it. George was still involved and had an experimental quality to it, and it was less linear. Rebels really thrived because I felt like growth of a family and a unit. So Dave did a good job expanding the mythology in that too, cool new ways. So there's good people involved, you know. But there's desperate place, they need content, you know. And not everyone, I think, working on it should be working on it.
Yeah. There's another project that you did that I wanted to ask you about. I'm a huge fan of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and you did a project called The Hollow. And I believe this was a TV movie, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah.
what I found very interesting, one of many things interesting about this project, was some of the people involved as well. I mean, you had a young Kaylee Cuoco on there who was, this is pre Big Bang Theory, I believe.
Yeah.
And Big Bang Theory is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. Judge Reinhold, who's, I mean, it's Judge Reinhold, right? And then what I did not realize until recently was that one of our dear friends, Natalia Nogalich, was also in it. And I'm curious how your experience was directing some of these incredibly talented actors.
You know, that was a crazy story. So I'm in LA pitching animated movie. I don't live in LA at this time. I get a phone call one morning. I'm supposed to go home the next morning. I get a phone call on a Sunday morning from a writer I know named Hans Rodionov and a producer, Mason Novick. And Mason produced movies like Juno and stuff after this. And they're like, what are you doing? Meet us at Starbucks right now, La Cienega. I'm like, wait, what? It's Sunday morning. And they're like, just meet us. So I go meet them at the Starbucks. And they're like, hey, we got this movie. And I'm like, yeah, I know you're making a movie. And they're like, no, our director, he quit. He's halfway up the coast to Vancouver. He quit. He left. But the movie's fully financed. Do you want to direct it? And I said, okay, when? They're like, today. Let's go. We gotta go to the set. Are you kidding me? There's a white van outside, right? And I hadn't read the script. So I'm in the car, no time to read the script. I just read the sides. You know, the sides are just like the pages for the day. I read like maybe 7 pages of the script. And so we drove to set and I met all the actors. I didn't cast the movie. And I met all the actors and they are trying to get out of the movie. They have lawyers. They're like, it was awful. We want out. We want nothing to do with this movie. And I had not read the script. And I had to go into this trailer and be like, no, it's going to be the best movie ever. Trust me. It's going to be amazing. And don't leave, please. And they all stayed. And I was like, oh my God, what have I got myself in for? And I felt like Ed Wood making this movie. I was like, that's great. Let's go. We got it. Move along. We got no time to shoot it and no money. And every time I'd make a suggestion, I was like, I'd like some blue filters here or some blue gels in these lights. And we don't have blue. We have Harvest. Chocolate. Okay, chocolate gels. All right, great. That's what I want. Chocolate gels are great. Let's use chocolate gels. We're gonna go for a Harvest deal, and then be like, we don't have that lens. Be like, all right, I didn't want that lens anyway. Let's use this lens. And this, the cinematographer was trying to get fired, and after 3 days of messing with me, he was like, I'd be like, put the camera here, put it on a 75 millimeter lens, and blah blah blah, you know, or whatever. And I would come back, and he would have done the exact opposite. He's like in the middle of the woods on a super zoom and on a dolly. And I was like, put it right here on a hi-hat, and it was like 100 yards away in the woods. And I'm like, all right, that's great. Let's do that. What a great idea. You know, he's like, after a couple of days, he's like, you're a very good director, and I don't like messing with you. I'm sorry. He's like, I'm just trying to get fired. I want to do this other indie movie. And I was like, can you just finish 2 more weeks with me? I'll let you go early. Just give me your best 2 weeks and stop messing with it. And eventually, yeah, he worked great, and he went to go do his indie movie, and we replaced him. But I needed to keep as many constants around me, people that knew the material, people that knew the script, people that had helped put this together before I got involved, because you're stepping in cold. I don't know why they cast this actor. You know, what was their audition like? What were you looking for? What was the quality that the director was? I had no conversation with the director. He's just gone. I looked at the footage and it was rough. It looked like, you know, Power Rangers, you know, level action. You know, it was like the Headless Horseman. It looked like he stepped out of the costume store wearing a brand new outfit. You know,
Oh
it was
my
like
gosh.
he came out of a grave, but really, they bought the costume yesterday. It was brand new black felt. And you're like,
Wow.
what's happening here? You know, so I had to take this thing over, and by the end, I was like the most passionate person, the longest standing person, and we got nominated for a couple of Sound Guild awards. But that was, you know, Stacey Keach was in the movie. Eileen Brennan, who won an Oscar, was nominated for an Oscar. She went for Clue.
Mm.
Kevin Zegers from the Air Bud movies. Yeah, Kaylee Cuoco, Nick Carter from the
Yep.
Backstreet Boys.
Yep.
So it was a crazy time. But again, like I looked at things that I could control and I'm very proud of, like the opening credits and sound design and things like that. But ultimately I was thrown in cold and I had no idea what the story was. You know, I was like, well, I'm never gonna have to deal with this again. And then you go and make Fanboys and they throw you in and they're like, they change everything. You're like, wow, every movie has really bad people involved. And then you get the next one, and you're like, oh my God, like every movie really does have crazy people involved. So that's just part of, you know, you're trying to move a paintbrush with 200 people, all trying to control it. And you have to convince them that they all need to move in your direction. This giant paintbrush. It's kind of what you're doing. You're making a giant painting and everyone wants to go in their own direction. Why should I move it for you? You have to you have to give that person the right messaging to make them motivated. Someone else needs different messaging, you know? And so there's a lot of like 90% of directing is, you know, ego management, psychology, cheerleading. It's, yeah, but that's what makes it fun too. Yes, that movie was a good one. If you haven't seen it, I don't know if I'd recommend it. I got pneumonia making it. I think I lost.
Wow.
I
Oh,
never got paid. I think I lost $10,000. I
Oh
was
my
like, this
gosh.
to make a movie. You know, I got so sick, I had to go to the hospital. Um, Slept on someone's floor through production.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm making a movie, you know. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't change the experience. It is what it is. And I learned, armed me for the next battle.
yeah, you integrated that experience to help you out in future ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it sounds like you would make a great dungeon master. I
I do that sometimes. I do some dungeon
Okay.
master.
Oh, okay.
It's fun. I do a
Yeah.
lot of voices and a lot of that. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So having kids and I have a 1-year-old, it's hard to carve out the time to justify the time to do it. I have a lot of like Dwarven Forge miniature stuff. I dream of just having the time to set up stuff and do it. I'm gonna get back into it heavily. The books really zapped a lot of my time, but I
Yeah.
love playing, but I do love dungeon mastering. It's fun. You know, not everyone wants to take that on. Um, it's the hardest thing in the world to get a good dungeon master, you know.
It's awesome. I was sensing that. Zach is our game. He's been our game master. So
Oh, cool.
oh,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, we've done a little Star Trek Adventures, Star Wars. I think the next game we're gonna do is Blade Runner, and Chris is gonna be our case manager or whatever they
That's
call it for
awesome.
the Blade
That
Runner
sounds
RPG that came
cool.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a Kickstarter campaign for it. We both got in it. We both like Blade Runner. Chris is a massive, massive Blade Runner fan, so we both got into. We haven't done it yet, but we're looking forward to trying out the Blade Runner RPG.
That looks really cool. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
Blade Runner.
So we would be remiss, Kyle, if we didn't ask you about getting into coffee. You've got some coffee, maybe you wanna share with our watchers and listeners.
So yeah, less than a year ago, we started this company called Pop Culture Coffee, and it's just a small group of us friends, and we all come from like film or entertainment backgrounds, storytellers. And the philosophy is we're going to license these things we love and do coffee related products. So um it's when you want to get closer to a brand, like one of our things is we have Roctagino coffee, Klingon coffee.
What?
Yeah, we have
What?
Janeway. We have something called Coffee Black, which is Janeway's coffee from Star Trek. So we are officially licensed. So this is one of them too. This is a beautiful bag. This is our Federation roast. And this is like in universe, like if your replicator broke, like what's on your ship, you know? Um,
Wow.
the Roctagino is beautiful. We put out these mugs. They're limited edition, hand spun, hand glazed mugs. We have 5 Star Trek mugs and 5 Ninja Turtle mugs. We're going to be debuting Ghostbusters. We have Ghostbusters coffee, and we're going to be doing the Ghostbusters mugs, which are beautiful. They're like Slimer one, a No Ghost, and a Stay Puff, and those are really nice. They're all like hand glazed, so they dip them, and everyone's unique. This is all popculturecoffee.com. And then we have Scream coming up and some other really cool IPs. And I hate saying the IPs, but they're stories, and I'm looking for stuff that's evergreen, character driven. We have Ninja Turtles coffee is awesome. So we put out
I
these 4 bags.
I was
We have,
gonna say I saw that on your Instagram. You posted that a few times.
yeah, this one is Shell Shock Sugar Cookie. It smells so good. This one is macadamia nut. It's like
Mm.
this, it's you open up the bag and you're like, oh my God. We have a product dropping Tuesday called Ooze Brew, and it's in a TCRI mutagen can. It looks really
Wow.
amazing. And that product is this pistachio flavored cold brew, but we have a bean version coming. And I'm telling you, I'll drink it at 7 a.m. I'll drink it at 9 p.m. I don't care. It's that good. Like this is that one. This is
Mm.
Oh,
in the
this is
mutagen can.
Wow.
this is
So
excellent.
I must admit, Kyle, I'm not a coffee drinker, but some of that sounds worth trying. I've tried lots of different coffees, but some of this sounds worth trying to see if I would maybe like it.
I didn't drink coffee until I was like 30. I was not into coffee. Um, and then I started getting into it. I don't sit around and drink like black coffee or, I need it to power my day.
Right.
If it's a cool flavor, I like it. So that's kind of more what I'm about. And I like these cool flavors. Like we have a Michelangelo one that's called Cowabunga Coconut Caramel. It's like these really cool hybrid flavors. We
Yeah.
have Turtle Power Peanut Butter Cup, which is Raphael, and it's Reese's Pieces. Ghostbusters has a really delicious one called Death Chill, which is based on the new movie, and it's a chocolatey mint, so it's like Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies.
Oh my.
They all smell amazing. When you open the bag, you're like, oh my God. And then when you taste them, they're great. We've kind of so many different cool ones coming up too. We have a line of Ninja Turtle villains coming in January. So cold brews and bags. And that's like a bodacious banana brownie with Bebop. We have a Rocky Road, which is Rocksteady. We have a Krang cosmic confetti cake, and we have a Shredder, which is like a churro one. It's really
Wow.
they're all good. They're all like organic, triple pick beans, ethically sourced. When they can be natural oils, we are. Sometimes you have to go a little bit artificial to get some of the more exotic flavors,
Mm.
but always erring on what's healthy or good. It's only highest quality stuff and small batch roasted. So it's all really good quality. It's not like the coffee is secondary to these IPs, but we're looking for, stuff that stimulates the franchise that we're working in. So Star Trek, we've got some really cool ones, and the mugs, even if you're not like a coffee drinker, the mugs are gorgeous. Like they're sturdy, they're like oven safe, dishwasher safe, freezer safe, hand glazed, top pottery place in North America. And so, they're Each one, like I said, is a little bit different. So it's like if you're not into, you just want to drink orange juice out of it, but you love Ninja Turtles, or you just want a cool Federation mug. We've got this great, the Voyager Delta mug, which goes with the Janeway Coffee Black, and the Raktajino mug has got Klingon symbol on the side. It's black with like this red glaze dip on the rim, and they're cool. They're all like, I spent a lot of time helping curate the collection and kind of setting up what the visual direction should be for the products and how we explore them. And we've got some really cool ones coming up in the next year too. So yeah, it's that. Yeah, I was never like a huge coffee drinker until later, like I said, and then I'm in it more for like the iced lattes and things like that, not the strong black coffee. So
Will there be a future like K-cup option?
we are going to be doing single serve K cups. We're going to be doing some decaf, and we'll probably be doing things that are not just coffee, other
Nice.
type of beverage leaning things.
Like prune juice.
Prune. Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, hilarious. Prune juice. It may be more leaning towards energy. I'm not like an energy drink person, but maybe teas, hot chocolates, things like
My
that.
kids love hot chocolate, as you can imagine, so that would be a real winner there.
Yeah. And I think, some of those, coffee, something obviously people drink later. They're not kids, later in life. So it's a developed taste. So we're not really going after like, Paw Patrol coffee. That would be unethical. But we are looking at some other cool ones that just, kids are into, but adults are into. It's stuff that's been around for generations, like Ghostbusters, like Star Trek, like Ninja Turtles, Scream. These things have been around for, multiple iterations. So that's what we're trying to do. It's fun. I mean, it's a whole different set of skills and muscles. I'm the coffee taster too. I conceive of the flavors and I taste the flavors. I approve the flavors. So anything that's out there is like, that's cool. There's a product. It's like a whole other set of senses. But then I can bring some of the skills from like writing D&D cookbooks and all that too. How you analyze a fandom, a set of stories, and how you what do you extract from those stories, and then what appeals to the fans.
Yeah.
Like knowing Star Trek well, like helps you curate how you should do Star Trek, and but you're never going to please everybody. There's always the person who's like, Star Trek coffee is the dumbest thing ever. I don't want to ever see that in my life. You're like, oh, okay, guy, like then don't buy it.
Yeah.
Like, but there's someone else that might love it and they'd rather buy Starfleet Command Federation roast as opposed to overly burned Starbucks.
Yeah.
You're gonna buy coffee, why not buy something that you love rather than some randoid like bean from some mega corporation? These are like small batch roasted and cool. So that's what we're trying to do.
So in the future, there'll be a Fanboys flavored coffee at some point, right?
You know what? Fogler and I were talking. Like Fogler and I want to do some stuff. Yeah.
I think you could have a Fanboys dark roast rush all the time.
That's what we'll call it. We'll call it the All Rush.
That's exactly
We're
it.
gonna name it. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and it's like keeps you up, so you can drive all night. Yeah,
Exactly. Drive through the night to go pimp slap some Trekkies.
yeah,
Right.
that's hilarious.
I'm gonna get me some of that coffee because that coffee
It
looks
is
awesome. Yeah,
It is super cool. We're doing obviously right now. It's like Christmas sales. We're doing tons of sales.
Awesome.
Right now, I think all Star Trek stuff is 25% off all the mugs and gift sets. Gift sets are cool. Comes with like one bag of like, say, Vulcan vanilla, and then with the Vulcan mug, or it's Kirk with an Enterprise mug, or Federation Roast comes with a beautiful Starfleet Command mug.
I've got some friends, some civilians that I work with who who are big coffee drinkers and big nerds. That could be some cool like Christmas gifts for them. I'm gonna have to order some of that, and then order some for me to try too.
You know what? These are cool. No one has these. So I'll say this. These are brand new. Like the mugs just came into the store, just came in this week. I think like we got them in the warehouse Thursday. So no one has this. It's not like you're going to be giving a Star Trek fan something they already have. These are brand new and super limited edition. So if you've got a friend, you're trying to think of a gift, super sales right now. And I was selling this pretty hard, but it's pretty darn cool. And so if you're looking for something original and unique in the Star Trek or Ninja Turtle or Ghostbuster space, for someone that you're like, I know they love it, but I don't know what they love. I don't know what they need. This is brand new. You know, it's not like it's been out there before. Like Ninja Turtles coffee has never existed. It's fun. You know, it's a totally different way of like showing that you love something, you know.
Yeah.
So it's cool. We'll see where it goes, and I'm excited about it, and I'm having fun doing it. It's exciting, like I said, working with physical product, with beverage, um, and like getting those little bean packs in the mail and tasting them, and you know, we have a cherry bourbon one. I don't drink, but I was like, this is pretty good. It's like got this exciting edge to it, and um, some other cool flavors are coming up. A good brown sugar one, and one's gonna be like a fruity marshmallow cereal.
Ooh.
Good breakfast blend. You know, it might smell like Lucky Charms
I
when
don't
you
drink coffee, but I want to try some of this stuff. Like this just sounds so good. If it tastes half as good as it sounds, I might be in.
it's cool. Like
I'd be drinking
I'm
coffee
telling you,
now.
the pistachio one, oh my God. It's like my favorite beverage on earth now. I'm just
Mm.
like, I don't want to drink anything else. I'll drink water and that. It's like it's so good. Um, and I don't know what I think there's I mean, I've never been like a flavored coffee person either. I might put like vanilla syrup or something in like a light capacity in a drink, but this is like it's a different experience, you know. You know, it's like it stimulates all your senses. You open the bag, and you're like, wow, and then you taste it and you're like, holy crap. Never had anything like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's atypical. It's off the beaten track of your traditional coffee roast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Kyle, I want to thank you so much for doing this and coming on and chatting with us and sharing your life, your career, hobbies, interests, your work. It's been really, for me, a dream to finally get a chance to talk with you after all these years of watching your work and watching Fanboys. I'm very grateful. We're both very grateful for you coming on and sharing your time with us.
You guys are awesome. Thank you. Good questions. You guys are great listeners. Let me ramble too long on all these subjects. Um, always happy to chat, you know. So you guys are great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciated getting to know you, like hearing your mind space, being in that mind space. It was just is special for both of us, and I appreciate your thoughts and like your commitment to vision and you wanting good people involved in your projects and you sharing like your aspirations for like what you want to contribute to Star Wars and Star Trek. Like keep that energy up, man, because
Yes.
that is like
Yeah,
that's
thank you.
incredible.
I'm never gonna let it die. I love this stuff too
Yeah.
much to give up on it. You know, that's my worry. I don't want people to give up on things like Star Wars. They're like, you know what, it's not for me anymore. And like that's BS. You know, Star Wars is forever. Star Wars is for everyone.
Yeah.
They need to start making stuff accordingly, you know, so it appeals. And you know, we tell the stories for next generations. And you know, I can't think of something better that I'd want my kids to be watching and learning, you know, values and morals and you know, there's great parables in it. Like I grew up, you know, learning Star Wars was my religion. It's like, let's get back to that. Let's bring it back to what it can be. Let it fire on all cylinders. Let it, you know, empower and teach and inspire. Rather than just being like, you know, episode a week, like filler.
Right. Yep.
Make it
We
special.
agree for sure. We've we've had many discussions and some rants on
Yeah.
topics just like that when it comes to things like Star Wars. But
Yeah, it doesn't mean we
yeah,
love it like less. It doesn't mean it's not being a hater either. You can be
yeah,
honest and clear about what you think works and what you think doesn't, and still be a supportive and
yep,
love the.
agreed. Yep. Well, yeah. Again, thank you so much, Kyle, for coming on with us. This was a real treat and a treasure to get to know you some more and talk with you about all this stuff. And Chris, who knows? Maybe somebody in Antarctica is listening or watching this. The only continent that we're not on yet.
I hope so. Kyle, we hope we can, I don't know, meet or talk with you like again in the future. Just be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Invite you to
Yeah,
like,
I got some when some new stuff's coming up, we'll talk
yeah,
and
That'd be
awesome.
great.
it'll be awesome. Yeah, keep in touch, send me the link and I'll be sure to spread the word. And thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And not that it ever needs it. And I'm very much a stickler on the purity of things, but I wouldn't necessarily, especially if as long as you're at the helm, I would not be opposed to a Fanboys 2.
It has been discussed.
Uh, that's music to
Has
my
been
ears.
discussed.
As
And
long as long as you're heading it, it has to be you that heads it. Otherwise, no
I
go.
wouldn't if I'm not involved in it, don't trust it.
No, I wouldn't.
I would boycott it. But yeah, maybe not a movie and not a show even. Maybe there's a movie, but there's lots of things that in talks, but something else.
Okay. That's good to
All
hear.
right.
Like I said, it's not that Fanboys needs anything else, but it will be great to see the gang back together again.
I'll
I
tell you once
that.
we click off the button. Once we
Okay.
Ah,
All right, that sounds good. Well, anyways, yes. So all of you watching and listening all over the globe and the interwebs, we very much appreciate it. As always, be sure to go to Facebook and Instagram and our YouTube channel and everywhere you get your podcasts to find this show and more. We thank you again for Kyle for joining us, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.